the Within Orb podcast. Come get Within Orb. Hello, my name is Jenn Zahrt, and welcome to Within Orb, a production of the Celestial Arts Education Library, a podcast bringing people together around the love of astrology, books. Join me as I interview people about the astrology books that changed their life and practice. You can support the podcast at withinorb.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Within Orb. And today we're heading to Oakland to visit Celeste Brooks. Celeste, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm super curious to hear about what astrology books have totally rocked your world. And before we get started with that, I wanted to share we are both alumna of the UC system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, I'm UC Berkeley. Which one for you?
I'm in Berkeley too. Yeah, I was there for 10 years.
Oh, fantastic. So you know the Bay Area well.
I love it. I used to live by the Solano Tunnel, and there's a fountain on Marin, that roundabout up there, and I used to call it the Rat Fountain, and I didn't find out until later that they're supposed to be baby bears.
Oh my God. I know exactly what
if you go past and look at it, it's like, what is that? Oh, wow. Rats on a fountain? It's like, no, it's actually just bears, because California bears. So go bears.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's go back to the beginning, and I want to ask you, what was the first astrology book that really made an impact on you and had you become aware of this whole thing called astrology?
Yeah, so the first one was The Power of Mercury by Leslie McGuirk, and I met her in person. She was giving a workshop, and this was right around when she launched the book. And a big part of the book is about, you can look up your Mercury and someone else's Mercury, and it tells you about how the two of you communicate. And it was eye-opening because I am divorced, and reading about my Mercury in Taurus and my ex-husband, who was a Pisces but had a Mercury in Aries, that opened my eyes to a lot of things that went on in terms of communication between the two of us. So yeah, I found it very useful in helping me understand myself better, and then looking at all kinds of other people as well. And it's like, this is why. Yeah, it was very useful.
That's a pretty amazing entry point into astrology through Mercury, because I feel like most people come through the sun and the sun sign astrology.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm such a Taurus. So like reading about Taurus, it's like, check, 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 check. But understanding the difference between, someone with a sun in one sign and Mercury in a different sign really opened my eyes to a lot of things about people who at their core may be X, but think like Y. And and I'm a sun and Mercury in Taurus. So yeah, identify with my thought process is very clear for me. So yeah, I found it very interesting to come through Mercury, which is, it's how we think, how we process information, how we communicate. So I think it's a great entry point.
I saw on YouTube recently a video saying that because of Mercury's orbit around the sun, even though if you put the planets in a lineup, Venus and Mars look like they're closer to Earth, because they move so far away from the sun when they're in their own orbits, or from the Earth when they're orbiting the sun, that Mercury is actually almost 43% closer to the Earth than Venus or Mars, and is the winner. Like, Mercury's closer to Earth more times than Mars or Venus.
Oh.
Isn't that wild?
That is.
So when you saw Leslie's work, how did you get into her orbit in this book launch? And then did it make you want to become an astrologer after you went to this event?
Yeah, so I love going to this spa called Rancho La Puerta in Mexico. And they always have someone who is, or a couple people who are presenting topics about different things. And I actually went to a talk she was doing about creativity. She's an artist as well as an astrologer. And so that's how I entered her orbit. And then she was talking about this book. So that brought me into the attention of the book. And it was later that she invited me to a class. And that's when I was like, oh my God, mind blown. As soon as I started learning astrology, and I just could not get enough of it. It took over my whole life where I was constantly studying. And I thought it would just be a hobby. But actually, it was a psychic who told me, oh, no, you are going to have your own thing. You're going to teach courses. You're going to have a school. And I'm like, listen to this woman. What are you talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
And it's all come to pass. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, because you have a background in something that I think I'm personally terrified by, which is corporate America.
Yes, 25 plus years in sales, marketing, and business development in Fortune 500 companies. So, yeah.
Do you feel like you've lived 2 lifetimes, like the before times and now the astrologer times?
Yeah, I have Uranus at my IC. So, yeah, midlife, was a big switch. I was an undercover rebel my whole life, and it's kind of been hidden from myself.
Oh, yeah. I love that. So you were just infiltrating the system, and then suddenly you kind of came out. It's National Coming Out Day when we're recording this, by the way. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Like, I'm an astrologer. Yeah, when I was at Berkeley, I felt very scared about telling my professors that I actually practice this thing that I keep bringing up in class. They're like, you seem to be really interested in that. And I'm like, yes, in the history and culture of astrology. Yes,
What was your major?
German literature.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I was always that person, they cover 800 years of German history, and astrology's only been out of favor for the last 300. So I had a nice 500-year chunk of valid research questions that I could bring up in class, and let people know, like, oh yeah, but here they were doing this with astrology. And but you could never say I do astrology. Like, you could never be out, as it were. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you were in corporate America, were you still there as you began learning with Leslie?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So were you using it?
Oh, yeah. So when I started learning astrology, I was doing like a reading on anyone who would give me their birth information, including my colleagues. It's just fascinating to me that you can look at where the planets were at the time of your birth and describe someone to them. And then I have Mercury trine Pluto. So, I could not get enough. Wow. And talk about timing of life. And like, did anything happen on this date? And they're like, how did you know? Yeah, you know how it is.
But you're like, I'm not a psychic about it. I'm literally reading data, right?
I'm reading data. Yeah, I'm going to use that. Reading data. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like sometimes people ask like, well, you can see the future. And it's like, no, I'm not seeing anything. Like, I can imagine things, yes. But, when you see that chart and you're telling someone stuff and they have that reaction of like, how did you know that? You're like, I don't know. I'm looking at your chart. Maybe. And what is it like for you when you read a chart? Do you see the people's future in a way? Is it visual for you, or is it more of a reporting of the data?
Yeah, I see what may be coming up for them. Yeah, I love using like eclipses. Sometimes I can see a whole story, but I really like to connect and talk with people about what's going on, and that can help really just flush it out so much better. But I also sometimes people want just like a video, and then, I'll see what I see and say maybe a couple of different ways it may have come up, and then the people will give me feedback. Oh my God, that's so accurate. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
So yeah, it brings the visual, brings in, like, sometimes you look at a chart and it's like, the person that minute. And sometimes it takes time to talk and tease out things, I find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you were to be taking the 3 most important astrology books with you to some remote location, like go back to Mexico and be on retreat and just kick back, but like, there's no other thing else, you have very limited luggage space, what would be the 3 books that would be in your baggage?
So that would be so hard for me to limit it to 3, but I think I'd have to do Sue Tompkins' Aspects in Astrology. I think this is such a incredible book that really flushes out everything. She gives details about the planets, all of the aspects, as well as like some of the more minor aspects, including one of my favorites, quintiles, which I call grace notes. I have several quintiles in my chart. And then, talks about the chart patterns as well. from a very psychological perspective. So I think this is just really just an incredibly well-written book that can be really helpful to go through all of the different ways some of these aspects can show up, regardless of what kind of aspects. It's really about when two planets are talking to each other.
Love that. Can you go deeper into why you call the quintile grace notes?
Yeah, well, Anne Ortley, one of my mentors, she gave that to me, and they're just like a little gift. It's like two planets that shouldn't be talking to each other are talking to each other. And yeah, it just allows you the ability to synthesize their energies in different and unique ways. Like I have Sun, quintile, Uranus.
And you're an amazingly talented astrologer, right? You're just
it just kind of like comes in.
Awesome. Okay, what's book number 2?
So book number 2 is The Art of Predictive Astrology by Carol Rushman. And I found this one recently, and it is just incredible because she's put together, I think, 50 years of her work. And she has a lot of little tools and tricks that I hadn't read anywhere else. She goes very deep into progressions, which I found it's hard to find books that really speak to progressions in terms of like progressed aspects. So I really like that. She talks about all the progressed planets, not just the moon or the sun. And she goes into things about eclipses and transits and retrogrades. And I just find it really, really, really interesting. Yeah.
That's new to me. Does she have some background in traditional, or is she mostly working with that progressed?
She talks about all kinds of stuff. I think she is more modern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a totally new book to me. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, and she's into the psychological stuff around astrology. I don't think it says exactly. It's a really, really good book.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that idea of looking more into something that was brought up with, I think it was CEO Carter or Alan Leo, when a secondary progressed aspect that's promising in the chart, like an applying one, finally connects, that is going to be a big deal. So it sounds like she's relying a little bit on some of that, maybe.
Yes, she talks about, talks about that.
Very cool. Imagine stepping into a room of 5,000 astrology books, turning a corner and stepping into a room of 2,000 more. The Celestial Arts Education Library is every astrologer's dream, and it can be yours. I invite you to come support CAELi before you can visit physically. Your support will mean the creation of 52 new episodes of Within Orb next year, 4 issues of the CAELi Review, our inaugural journal, and countless book talks, events, classes for our community. Visit our website, www.caeli.institute/support, to select your level of care. Please help support CAELi into the future, our future, so that we may study the future together. Thank you for listening. Please enjoy the rest of the show. You've said eclipses a number of times, so what does she prepare for you with eclipses that really adds to your practice?
Well, I use eclipse. That's the first thing I look at in someone's chart when I'm looking. I, know the eclipse degrees and go right to that in their chart to see what's coming up for them. I just have a mind where I just like remember things. Maybe it's like Cancer rising. So like if I saw 19 Gemini in a chart, and that would get me thinking about like what was going on in their life in 2021 when that was happening and this and that. So I use like my brain is weird. I use eclipses, as well as if I see a degree like that's around this time, like with new moons and full moons and things like that. Yeah. So she had some like nice examples about what could be going on with the new moon in whatever house. But this is my favorite eclipse book, Lunar Shadows III.
Yeah.
I love this book because Dietrech Pessin, she delineates between like North Node solar eclipses and South Node solar eclipses. And it's just so true. And it's very technical. This is a very, very dense and technical book. She got me started on the Moon Phase Families, these 27-month cycles where you have activations every 9 months. And she details that, and they're all in the book for like 50 years or something like that.
Say more about that. A moon phase family.
Every month we have a new moon, and then a week later, the first quarter, then the full, then the last quarter. Well, she noticed in working with her clients that, so the new moon, 9 months after that new moon, there will be a first quarter moon, which is at about the same degree. So say you had a new moon at 15 Aries. 9 months from then, there will be a first quarter moon where the sun is in Capricorn and the moon is in Aries, and they're both at approximately 15 degrees. And there would be something related to whatever was seated in the new moon would have a pivot point or a turning point in the story. And then 9 months after that, when there's a full moon in Aries and the sun is in Libra, both at about 15 degrees, there will be another part of the story. And then 9 months after that, with the sun in Cancer and the moon in Aries at about 15 degrees, there will be a last quarter moon, and there will be some kind of pivot point about the story. So yeah, so I like to use them, like if you're planning something, what is the new moon you're starting it in? So where do you want to be in that 9 months? Where do you want to be in that 18 months? This is for larger projects, but you'll see with relationships and things that the pivots really show up in ways. And it's just fascinating, especially when your chart is really activated, when the moon is conjunct like a planet or an angle or a node. Yeah, you'll really see stories.
I feel like you've just delivered everyone brand new toys for Christmas. That is so cool. I've never even thought of that way of measuring time before. So Lunar Shadows III, The Predictive Power of Moon Phases and Eclipses by Dietrech Pessin, has this moon phase family in it. Mm-hmm. That is going to set my mind off on a whole nother research track. I love it. Thank you, Celeste.
You're welcome. And I post about these every week on Instagram. So I'll post the whole family.
Yeah.
And so you can go back and look. So I love journaling for this purpose, so that I can keep track of these things. I teach my students to title your journal pages with like the new moon in whatever and the first quarter moon, like delineate them in your journal so that you can easily flip back and see these stories. And then you really let your mind flex when you're looking at the story, because sometimes these are emotional things that are coming up, and you look 2 weeks before and after is what I recommend to see what's going on.
Amazing. So everybody listening, you have homework now, because you need to get out a journal and study the transiting moon phase families through your chart. Mm-hmm. It's going to be amazing. I love it. I'm already like thinking about 500 things I want to do with that now.
Yeah, it's a really cool way to measure time, because you think it takes 9 months to grow a baby.
Yeah, I know. And the development, I mean, that tracks with so many various ways. 9 folds into numbers in astrology. And then you think of the 13 lunations in a year in a solely lunar calendar, with the 9 coming in at the same time. Like, that's a really cool, yeah, there's just so much there. And like,
and think about the tarot 9s. It's like a number of completion and numerology. Mm-hmm. It's almost like you're not quite there. Like if you think of the 10 as, but yeah.
Also, just the way 9 works when you multiply it, and like 3 times 3 is 9, and then anything times 9 adds up to 9. So it's this beautiful fractal in the head. Wow. Okay. Yeah, that is amazing.
I love the way your brain works.
Yeah. Right. Thanks. Okay, so that sounds like must read for everyone, because that just blew my mind. And I hope everyone listening is still a little bit like, pause the tape. This is crazy.
Yeah, this is a great book. Yes.
So yeah. And if you need to link to it, it's going to be in the show notes, everybody. So go check it out. Lunar Shadows III. Okay. So you said something about having a school and students. Tell me more about that, because my last question is always, where do you point people when they're trying to enter the field of astrology? Which books do you tell them to do? So first tell me about your school, and then tell me about the books that you recommend to your students first.
Yeah, so I don't officially call it a school yet, but I teach Moon Mastery. It's classes where I teach people everything about the moon and her cycles, as well as I teach a foundations of astrology class, and I'm building out more and more. and more classes to bring in more complex topics about not just natal astrology, but I love mundane astrology and horary. I study horary. And so, yes, so you can find everything about my classes, what I'm teaching on astrologybyceleste.com.
So when you say everything about the moon, you also just mentioned branches of astrology, horary, mundane. So do people get to have moon magic in those fields as well, or is it the moon of just natal?
The moon magic in those fields as well. So I like kind of mix all my stuff.
You mix all the branches with only a focus on the moon.
Well, for my moon mastery.
Yeah, moon mastery.
Well, we talk about other things about the moon, but yeah, the moon is so important in astrology.
No, I just love that, because if you're thinking of just this one factor who is closer to us than Mercury, because, because of that fact I said about Mercury at the beginning, but the moon, like, that's a really neat way, I think, to see the entire field of astrology through this one factor, because you can see the natal moon, horary moon, mundane moon, and then you bring it all together, and it lets you understand like the levels that you're going to be looking at the star stuff with, because the data is the data, and you're like, is this natal data? Is it horary data? Is it mundane data? And that completely changes how you interpret.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the moon phases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the moon phases are so important. Like if something happens, like I'm really into helping people understand like the daily life events that you experience. Hello, Cancer rising, hello, moon. And so if something happens, or if you think, oh, you don't know the exact date, if you look at the moon phase right before an event, it'll explain the story. So yeah.
I love it.
I love the moon and everything.
Yeah. Oh man, that is such a cool course design concept. So congrats on that. That's so neat. So what books do you tell people to read when they're beginning to learn astrology?
Yeah. So I love Stephen Forrest's Inner Sky. It's so fun. I hadn't picked it up in a while, and now I'm remembering why I love it so much. Well, he is just such an amazingly lyrical writer, writes so beautifully, and I love how he has organized this book. I feel like it's a great entry point. Like when he goes into the planets, he talks about their function, their dysfunction, key questions. I love how he has you question yourself in all of his books. And then also talks about if the planet is retrograde. So he has just an amazing way of writing and helping people put it all together is one. I think this Ren Butler's The Archetypal Universe is a really beautiful book. I recommend this for writers because he just does such a beautiful job of talking about images and themes, and he takes all the planets and puts them together in just two, and then makes triads. What if you have this planet, then this planet? And talks about the positive manifestations as well as the not so positive ones, and shadow qualities and archetypes and dream images and themes, which I think is really good. So this is just a beautifully written book as well. And then I like this Keywords in Astrology by, I don't even know how to say their names particularly, Hajo Bonzoff,
I think.
Bonzoff and Anna Habler.
Yeah, this one right here.
Yeah, it's a really good manual for finding keywords, and it goes through everything, all of the signs and every planet in the sign and houses, aspects. Yeah.
Yeah. And you even have this layout. It has this very interesting layout.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll put an image up in the blog post about this episode where there's these blocks of data where it groups things together and organizes it in this very systematic way.
Yeah, very well organized. It's such, I wonder if they're Virgo. Somebody's got strong Virgo energy, whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like with the moon, like the inner mother image, difficult lessons to learn as a mother, strengths, problem areas. Yeah, key principles. Yeah, it does a really nice job with laying everything out. And it's a great reference tool.
I love that. Yeah, as a reference, exactly. So you have this lyrical Stephen Forrest entry point, and then you have this Ren Butler archetypal download and maybe even dream work, and then you can go back to this Keywords for Astrology reference book and sort of put it all together in a succinct way after going through these journeys of narrative arc and all of that.
Yes, exactly.
Wonderful. So where can people find you when they need to know more? Because it has been so much fun speaking with you today and learning and getting my mind blown about all of the various ways that you tackle astrology. Where can people find you?
So my website is astrologybyceleste.com. I have a podcast called Celestial Insights, and you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm on Instagram as my main platform, and I'm at Astrology by Celeste everywhere on social. But I'm also on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. But Instagram, I do live shows 3 times a week currently, where one I do the astrology of current events. And then I call myself an intuitive as well, because I love working with tarot and oracle cards, and I do an astro oracle program on Mondays, Celestial Insights with the news on Wednesdays, and then I do cosmic conversations where I'm talking to someone else on Fridays.
Amazing. Amazing. So yes, that Cancer rising is working because your moon is doing it all. I love it.
Well, my moon's in my 10th house.
We see you. We see you. Okay. Well, thank you for coming Within Orb. It's so wonderful to have you here, and I look forward to more collabs in the future.
Thank you, Jen. So nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Within Orb. To learn more about the Celestial Arts Education Library, or to become a member, visit our website at CAELi.institute. That's www.caeli.institute. If you enjoyed this episode, please help spread the word. Follow or subscribe to Within Orb in your podcatcher of choice, rate it 5 stars, or write us a happy review. This helps others find the show. We also want to give a big thanks to the indie band The E-Block for contributing their song Wake Up for our intro and outro music. You can find them at their website, eblockband.com. This is Jenn Zahrt, signing off for now. See you next time.